Us is Mary Beth Cottrell to share a few words as our sponsor. Mary Beth?
Thanks, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to be with you and as friends of Tempo and EWL, as well as our guests. BMO is a very proud sponsor of these important Tempo talks, and to get to hear from our members is an exceptional opportunity that many times we weren't getting to do in the past. I was going to speak about just briefly about some of the things that we're doing internally, which are just great in related to BMO for Women and helping with career changes, as we just this week did some internal education around advancing career in digital, and specifically digital marketing was part of that. However, I literally just got off a phone call and a presentation that BMO did for us worldwide as Employee Appreciation Week is kicking off. And we had a special speaker, somebody I wasn't familiar with, but I thought our group here could really benefit from a couple of the things that might just pique your interest. It was a psychologist, Harvard trained, from his name is Sean Aker. It looks like Anchor, but without the N. And he has a TED Talk. His research for the last, I think he said 12 plus years, has been around happiness. And it seemed like something we could all benefit from. He said he has a TED Talk that's less than 15 minutes, and it makes all the difference in trying some positive habits. Some of the research he shared had to do with things as simple as this. If a person is alone and is looking at a hill that they have to climb, their brain changes, and they see that brain 30% steeper than they do when they have others with them who are going to work, even if it's just one other person, to help them tackle that hill together. I thought that was really interesting, and it made me think of the value we have in our group here with Tempo and EWL and the guests who are joining us in helping each other get through some difficult times. Another piece that I'm going to try, he suggested one habit of starting something that I try to say, count my blessings on a daily basis. But he said, if you actually start to write down each night or each morning 3 new things to be grateful for, new things, not the typical things, it expands your mind and you start to think about things in a very different way on an ongoing basis. And when they have tracked it for everyone, whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, or you're in a happy spot or a not so happy spot these days, if you do that for 21 days, what they have been able to find is that you would be, the people who have done this have been able to be categorized in their testing from a low-level pessimist to a low-level optimist. And I think it's worth that we each try it. Now, I like to share these things because once in a while I hear from you about things that are going on at your organizations or that you're trying. I would love to hear if you're going to try this, or if you do, what the results are for you. Enjoy our wonderful presentation about how we're all adapting in the marketing world. And thanks to our speakers for being here to share their amazing expertise. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mary Beth. I love that. So I'm going to start with my first grateful note, which is for this amazing panel, which we're going to be moving over to Catherine Murray in just a moment to facilitate. So the panel we have today are some marketing experts. Catherine today will be our moderator for this session. So without further ado, Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you for introductions and to get us on our way.
All right, well, thanks, Kelly. And before we get started, thank you to Kelly for this great session today. You were really the brains behind the operations. So thank you for organizing this topic that continues to be really relevant. So our panelists, my name's Catherine Murray. I'm our moderator today. I'm the marketing director for Hamas Company. And our panelists today are Julie Ray, Chief Marketing Officer for the Bartolotta Restaurants, Ann Stadler, who is Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for Marcus. We also have Christina Stetter, who is the Executive Vice President for the marketing firm Trevera. So I'll turn it over to our panelists just to tell us a little bit more about themselves, their role, their background, their organization. So Julie, why don't we go ahead and get started with you?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you today. I'll start with a little background on myself. I've been in the marketing field for more than 25 years, but who's counting? I've held a lot of leadership positions in a variety of organizations, from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofits and family-owned businesses. I would say my foundational years were spent at Kimberly-Clark Corporation, a consumer products company. Many of you know the brands, Kleenex, Huggies, Kotex. And it was really there that I learned the value of customer insights and data-driven marketing decision-making, as well as working in a culture of excellence. And I think for me, that kind of grounded my beginning years and really my approach to marketing for my whole career. From there, I actually worked for the Wisconsin Historical Society in Madison for 9 years, a really interesting job and an opportunity to rebrand that organization. But currently I work as the Chief Marketing Officer for the Bartolotta Restaurants. I know you all know us in one shape or form, have probably been in multiple restaurants of ours. But we are actually a nationally recognized organization, and we obviously own restaurants and catering company, up to 17 different venues we operate. We've been around 28 years as of this month, hard to believe. And my role is really to lead the strategic marketing efforts for the company. So that covers a really wide range of responsibilities, whether it's launching a new restaurant or a reconcepted location, really developing and implementing integrated marketing plans, and building engagement and loyalty through our Bartolotta Rewards program. So those are some of the things I'm responsible for. I think we also had a little question about how long have we been a Tempo member. I've been with Tempo for 3.5 years and have actually begun getting much more engaged with Tempo over the past year during this COVID time. So one of the things I'm grateful for. And as far as a current mantra, that was something we talked about sharing. I would say my philosophy is talk a little less and listen a little more, and you'll become a lot wiser. And I think that's true whether it's at work or with your family or children or customers. You know, a really important role that we have in marketing is to be exceptional listeners. So that's kind of my philosophy. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Julie. We're already only 12 minutes in, and we've already got some really good nuggets of advice today from Mary Beth and Julie. So, all right, Julie, thank you very much. And let's have Anne go ahead and provide an introduction of yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good afternoon, marketers, because we really all are marketers for the organizations that we do business with. And I'm pleased to be here today. And I started my career, I spent 17 years at advertising and marketing firms. And the ones that you might recognize are Bader Rudder or Kramer Krasselt, where I worked on a variety of either B2B or B2C clients. And during that time, I also was able to teach for 6 years at Marquette. And it was a career development class on how do we, as communications and marketing leaders, how do we find jobs? And because obviously networking plays a big role within that. So it was fun being able to get that started at the university. From there, I was invited to join the United Way of Greater Milwaukee and their executive team. And so there I was able to help shift them from being perceived as a fundraiser. I said, you guys, we are the largest health and human services non-government funder. We need to emphasize that part of it and to take advantage of the fact that we're the 26th most valuable brand according to Forbes in the world. And how are we going to be able to position that? And had fun rebranding and launching the Live United brand with them. From there, I was invited to join the Marcus Corporation, and in particular, Marcus Theaters. They created a new CMO role. And so I walked into that organization as truly the first, I'll say, disciplined, learned marketer, because a lot of the people had wonderful expertise in terms of that theater industry, and they grew up in the theaters and had valuable information, but being able to look from a different lens and be able to offer perspective from that standpoint. And so from there, I've been there 7 years. And lucky number 7 is going to be in 2021, right, ladies? When I joined the organization, if we look back those 7 years, we had 54 theaters, and we were in 9 states in the Midwest. And during these past primarily 6 years, because last year was a little challenging, as we'll discuss together, is that we grew, and we grew very strategically in terms of looking at our year-over-year growth with our same stores or same theaters. We looked at some new builds, which obviously are a very significant investment, but we also looked at acquisitions. And so during my tenure there, I helped to lead 2 acquisitions that helped grow us and added and got us up to 90 theaters, and we're now in 17 states. And we'll talk about why that diversification is important later. But that was key in terms of as we looked at how we could help sustain our 4th largest theater circuit within the United States. In terms of Tempo, I have been a member for 14 years. I've had the pleasure of working and meeting a lot of wonderful individuals through the programming committee or the membership committee or co-chairing the leadership event, hoping to co-chair one of the mentor circles when that concept first got started many years ago. And I love Tempo because, first of all, the programs, I always learn something professionally, but I like how we include some personal angles to it. And then I just appreciate the energy and the camaraderie that I feel within the group, and being able to be comfortable asking questions and to be able to be myself and to learn from others. So I really appreciate that. And based on the year we're all going to talk about, my mantra is to do things that make you happy. Because there is so much of the world around us that we can't control. And so we have to focus our energy on the things that make us smile. And for me, I appreciate being able to share that with you today.
Thank you very much, Anne. And now Christina.
Hey, everybody. Really glad to be here today. I am the EVP at Trevera Interactive, but I actually started my career at Kohl's, where I spent about 8 years as a merchant working in the stores in the buying office, and then got into marketing accidentally in 1998 and bounced around between a variety of in-house and agency positions, spent about 9 years running my own agency, and now work in the field of digital marketing, which I absolutely love because it is just so fun and something is changing every day. Trevera started about 25 years ago, which is kind of like the year 1 for a digital marketing company. I mean, back then people thought that they had no use for the internet. We didn't understand what it was. It was really kind of amazing. And so the business has really grown and changed over those years. And we're not just a website development company anymore. We have to be a full service digital marketing agency because that's where communication is happening now. So at the agency, I work on primarily strategic planning and account management for clients. So I pull together teams of SEO people, content writers, user experience people, social media, whatever clients need to achieve their business goals, and then help to make sure that everybody is focused on that business goal and they don't get too into the weeds with their own individual disciplines, so that we're always helping clients to make good things happen. And I have been a Tempo member for about 8 years. I joined because I wanted to meet people that I could learn from and also to serve the community. So I've been on a variety of committees over the years. Right now I'm in the professional development committee. And as far as my philosophy or my mantra, I don't know if it's really a mantra, but because I'm the kind of person who has changed careers, changed jobs, built an agency, work in digital marketing, like I'm always in a field where things are changing a lot and always having to learn something new. And I'm a planner, which those two things kind of don't always go together. I really focus on telling myself, like, that's a problem for tomorrow, or that's a problem for next week, or something like that, because I'll see the problems that are maybe 6 months down the road. And if I focus too hard on them, I can get really overwhelmed because, I mean, like we all know, if you just focus on the problem in front of you and solve that one, the next one is easier to solve. So I'm always having to constantly remind myself, like, that's a problem for tomorrow. And the other thing I say kind of related to that is if I had $1 for every problem I solved that I didn't know how to solve when I started trying to solve it, I could pay for my house in cash. And nobody gives me those dollars because I do not own my house, but I really wish they would.
Well, thank you, Anne. You will have great insight for this panel then, as certainly things have changed quickly and we've had a lot of problems to solve for. So thanks to our panelists. To start off, you know, we've all experienced extremely turbulent times lately with social unrest, the COVID pandemic, an unprecedented economic downturn, a new virtual era, the list goes on. So our first question for the panelists, at what point did you and your organization begin making changes in how you connected or communicated with your clients and customers? And how did you quickly adapt given the speed of this changing environment?
I'm happy to jump in and kick it off. Obviously, this last year for the restaurant industry has been disruptive is such a small word. it really turned everything we did on its head. And you know, for us, the impact was immediate. It was you know, we very quickly figured out that, you know, maybe we could try doing curbside as an option. And we did actually do that for, I think, a total of 3 days. But we quickly decided that the best path for us, given that our main concern was our employees, was to simply shut down. And that was not an easy decision to make. It was hard. And, you know, we did it pretty close to when kind of the city shut down. So when did we change? It was kind of immediate, and you know, nobody saw it coming. It was just such a, I know we all now will look back on our photos and like share what was the last normal photo you had before this happened. But you know, we shut down right away. We went from, I would say, about 850 employees down to 20, and going through that process alone was a pretty big undertaking. And then I think we entered a phase of, we went through several phases along the way. And the first phase for us was really just trying to get an understanding of what was going on. We focused on listening to the medical professionals to get a gauge on, you know, is this a 1 month issue? Is it a 3 month issue? Is this a 6 month issue? To try to figure out how best to respond and when we could open up and how. That took a while to figure out. And I think that during that time as marketing, the marketing person, actually, I was the one person on staff. I think our main focus was communication, you know, making sure we were reaching out to employees so they knew what was going on, speaking with our guests, speaking with catering people who had events planned and needed to figure out what to do with those. So it was very much a lot of listening and communicating, and a lot of times we didn't have a lot of an update. You know, it was, we don't know, we're taking it day by day. And so that's what we did. I think past that phase, we then entered a phase where we got a handle on what was happening and when we might be able to reopen. And we started to put our sights on that. And we took a very slow approach. We opened Ristorante Bartolotta in Wauwatosa first in July of last year. So after being closed for 3 months, and we put a lot of planning into that to really figure out, how do we do it safely? How do we make sure our employees feel safe? Because for us, if our employees didn't feel safe, our customers weren't going to feel safe. So it kind of started there, and we did, you know, all the little touches from putting dividers between tables. We actually decided to open our terrace, which is like an outdoor patio. And in the end, it actually brought us quite a bit of business that we wouldn't have seen normally. So there was a silver lining for Ristorante that summer. But it really was, we got used to not really planning very far out and trying to listen and get the best information we could before we went out with our plan, and then being ready to adjust because we knew we would need to, not knowing what the next phase is. And I am excited to be here today to say we've opened 7 of our restaurants, and we've got our process down, and we're feeling pretty good about it, and we're excited to continue reopening, and we can't wait for warm weather. So that was a bit of the journey that we have been going through.
Thanks, Julie. Anne or Christina, do you want to chime in about how your organizations kind of had to pivot as well, given all that was happening?
And do you want to go next? Because I thought I'd probably answer this from like the agency perspective, just because I can talk across a bunch of different clients. So
Sure, sounds good. So as part of my role is in terms of CMO is I'm overseeing communications and media relations and crisis management. So I'm used to sleeping with my phone because lots of times those things I'm needing to deal with the challenges that surface with our business that does most of its business either weeknights or weekends or holidays. And so when I think back a year ago to St. Patrick's Day holiday, that was anything but lucky. In terms of for me or for Marcus Theaters, because that really was the day, ladies, that we shut down. And it had started a week earlier where theaters were being required to close due to local ordinances. And I think this is one thing that I think all of us know how our governments work, but I think the pandemic really helped to show what a republic we are and the fact that a lot of those decisions are made at the local level. And as I shared, we have 90 theaters, and so we were dealing with 90 counties that all had different requirements as they were ttrying to figure out, as Julie had said, what the heck is going on and what needs to happen, and we were trying to honor those as a business because that was our strategy is whatever is government is directing, obviously we would follow. So we were scrambling to learn more about the virus. We were trying to put social distancing plans together that week earlier before all this happened. Thinking, okay, if we meet these requirements, if I can get the technology to work, if I can design these plans, then we can keep our doors open, we can keep associates employed. And so that was really a domino effect of those theaters closing. And I remember sending out a media release that March 16th of saying, here's how we're going to do it. And then literally we're living those days and those hours actually to saying, okay, we can't do this because all of these are falling and it doesn't make sense just to have a few open. And so how we were communicating, Catherine, to our guests and to our customers in the community is we did, and our stockholders, is that we did do, that media release on the wire on Monday trying to say, hey, we've got this, here's how we're doing this. We're staying in touch with what needs to happen using our loyalty channels. We are very fortunate that we have 4.2 million loyalty members. So we're able to communicate with them through our social channels, through our media relations efforts, because all the local newspapers were calling saying, what are you doing? Are you staying open? Are you not? But it's one of those, so we made the decision, and St. Patrick's Day last year was a $5 movie Tuesday that we would close at that end of that day. But in some communities, it didn't even make it that long. I sent you an email in the morning saying, today's our last day open. And then I have a county that literally is telling me at 3 o'clock, you have to close by 5. And so we're trying to figure out how do we have good customer service, letting those guests know, not having them show up to the theater upset because they don't get to see their movie because the government told them we had to close, and making sure that there was unity and a reason that everyone was doing this for the right reason. And just how far in advance do we refund those tickets? Like Julie said, we had no idea how long this was going to last. I had movie tickets sold through May for some of our big opening films. And obviously I don't want to give back that revenue if we're going to be opening in the next couple of weeks because it's a hassle and people aren't going to like the receipts that they have to sit in. So there was a whole bunch of efforts surrounding that. And I think it's, one of the things that had been asked of us is, how did you feel? And I think it's just a blur. It was the matter that we as strong women just do what we need to do, or as strong leaders, and that you just jump in and take charge. And I think the role that I play on the executive team is one where I'm constantly gathering the information. I'm trying to calm people. I'm trying to work with legal to understand what needs to be said and to put it in a way that the guests can understand, and that it presents us in the best light possible for all of our efforts. So,
thank you very much, Anne.
So my answer is obviously a little different because being in the space of digital marketing, as Anne alluded to in her answer, COVID really forced everyone to communicate digitally. I mean, like, look at what we're doing right now, right? And so for Trevera, we were incredibly busy because all of a sudden there was a lot of interest in either getting into it or doing it better. And we found, I'm just going to answer from like a sort of a broad perspective, that there were a lot of companies out there who maybe in the past had sort of known they weren't doing a great job with their website or their social channels, or they weren't using inbound or whatever, but they were able to rely on word of mouth or salespeople or whatever to sort of keep their businesses going and the revenue coming in. And so they didn't have to maybe update their website or do some of the things that as marketers we would want them to do. So they weren't creating relationships online. And suddenly that was the only thing that was left for them to do, because we started hearing a lot from clients about how salespeople couldn't get a hold of their prospects. You know, you couldn't cold call anymore. And for a lot of us, the contact information we had for people didn't work. You know, you couldn't call someone in their office, they weren't there. So it was really weird, and it sort of pushed people into this new world they didn't really understand a lot, because digital marketing has changed a lot in the last few years. And I think the biggest thing that we noticed is that it started to make people feel like their sales cycle was a lot longer because there was a lack of understanding on how it worked. So they were adjusting to these digital tools. And so, like, say I'm a business owner and I think my sales cycle is this long and it takes a certain amount of time. And what would happen is you know, as when you're marketing digitally, you try to market to people who are in this part of the sales cycle where they're doing the discovery. You know, think about your own search behavior. You want to buy something, you do like 100 searches on it, you visit a website multiple times before you tell someone who you are, and you do all this exploratory work on your own before you reach out to somebody. So suddenly businesses were aware of the part of the sales funnel that they weren't aware of anymore before. And they felt like they should be able to close in the same amount of time, but you can't. And so I always tell people that's like asking someone to marry you on the first date. So it's not like you visit a website and you hit the contact button and you buy something immediately. That's not how it works. And so we've had to do a lot of education around understanding search behavior, the fact that people visit websites, you know, 8 to 12 times before they're willing to reveal themselves. We have had to explain micro conversions and how to build relationships online, because, you know, there are tools like Hubspot that are great for helping with that. But if you try to convert too quickly, it doesn't work. And so for some reason, that digital screen thing kind of threw people off. It was like people would forget that, you know, I'm a person and you're a person. We just happen to have a screen in between the two of us. And the things that make a salesperson good, you know, helpful, consultative, all of those things still apply online. But for some reason, the technology really hoses up the way people think about the sales process. And so we've had to do a lot of education to help people understand the 21st century sales process and what happens online and how it all works.
That's really interesting. Thank you. So follow-up question to that, you know, you've all talked about some of the changes that you've made or things that you've learned. What would you say are the pros and cons to the changes you've made or had to make? And what are some of the lessons that you've learned throughout this process?
I'll go first, since I went last. I think the one thing that we've learned is, you know, we saw a lot of people taking what worked live and trying to replicate it online. And, you know, like, I think we've all been to some virtual events that were fantastic. And we've been to some virtual trade shows that were dogs, you know. And so it doesn't, what happens online doesn't always it doesn't translate well, you know. And I think we've all been webinared to death now. I mean, my God, we spend our whole lives on Zoom. And I feel like we're sort of at the beginning days of the internet. You know, remember back when people would first build websites and they put "welcome to our website" on the website because people weren't sure if your website was a brochure or if it was a replacement for your office. And I feel like we're kind of in those days right now. Like, we're trying to figure out what is going to happen online and what's going to happen in person, and how do those two things work together. Another thing that we've learned throughout this is that because of the blending of work and home lives, you know, you might, if you have young kids, you might be getting up early and working for a little bit and then going to do your other job of helping your kids do online school, and then maybe hopping back into work later and then going back to have dinner and then hopping back on at night. Is that the whole concept of traditional day parts don't really exist anymore. And you have to communicate with people at different times or be really open to experimentation around that. And then I think the last thing that we've learned is because so many people are trying to get into content creation and marketing, that we've had to teach people a lot that, you know, there's a lot of great marketers in Tempo. So you guys all know a good marketer asks about 11 billion questions, because you can't just magic up good content. You actually have to understand in depth what you're writing about. And so we've had to do a lot of education around, you know, we have to be smart in order to write SEO optimized content. You can't just like put marketing fluff out there and have that actually work.
Interesting. Yep. Julie, Anne?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think for us, there were a couple of really good pros to the changes that we made. We were really challenged to take a hard look at our business model. You know, the restaurant industry is known for running on very slim margins. And when we were faced with being able to run our restaurants, but having to reduce our capacity significantly, you know, we had to think about, well, how would we do that? How would we, you know, be able to bring in enough money to cover our costs? And, you know, our goal was definitely not about making money. It was just bringing people back and trying to break even. So it made us think very differently about, well, how could we do that within the limitations that we have? And we experimented with, if any of you have been to Ristorante, we're still doing it, a 4-course regional menu, which basically means for us, the benefit, the pro is that we know that people are coming in for roughly a certain amount of time, because that's how long it takes to have that kind of menu. And then the kitchen knows you're going to be having 4 courses and these are your options. It lets us run more efficiently, plan more efficiently, and be able to turn tables over in the right amount of time. It's a really carefully orchestrated model to make it all work out. But it challenged us, and I think that was a really good thing, because to sort of push us out of our comfort zone and think about how to do that. I think the other thing I would say that was a pro is just we've always listened to our customers, and we have the benefit of seeing them face to face when they're in our restaurants. When they're not in our restaurants, you know, it was a little uncomfortable. You know, what are they thinking? Why aren't they coming? Where are they at? And I think we were able to tap into the relationship we have with our loyalty members, and just our guests giving us input over social media. And I think we were able to really focus in on listening to what people had to say and informing what we were doing and continuing to improve. If there was any con to the changes we have had to make, I would say a lot of what we are feeling we have to do because of the times that we're in and the safety measures are sometimes opposite of what we would do in the hospitality business. You know, wanting to be able to say yes to people is like in our blood. And when people don't want to have to wear a mask, or they, you know, want to stay in our restaurant for hours and hours, like we have to feel like the bad guys sometimes, and, you know, communicate the rules. And, you know, we really have been going above and beyond to set expectations for people before they come in. So they know, you know, this is the experience and these are the parameters. And we hope you're comfortable with that, come in and dine. But if you're not, it's okay. You know, when we get to the time when we don't have to do all this stuff, we hope to see you back. So I think that's for us, just trying to struggle with how to still provide exceptional hospitality while not being able to say yes to everything.
Yeah, and just to build off that, because obviously Julie and I are in the same industry in terms of, because we've got restaurants and bars in addition to being able to show you a movie. And it is hard. When I think of that reopening plan, I mean, we went through 40 different reiterations, you guys, as things were trying to evolve and what was trying to be able to do, from walking through the front door to, putting pieces that you didn't have to open it with your hands, you can open it with your foot, to who's going to greet you. But I think the pro that really came from it was the technology. If you have not been to our app lately, I encourage you to download it. If you have come recently, or if you're going to come hopefully soon and feel comfortable, we made significant investments in that process because we wanted people to have a low, no touch experience if they so desired. And so that was a big focus early on trying to be able to get that situated. Julie was also talking about food and streamlining menus, and we did the same thing. I mean, when you talk about the fact that your business traffic has dramatically decreased, you can't have as much waste and you can't have as much offers because every dollar is important. And so that I think, is in terms of how we got smarter as a business. Our loyalty program, we have nice relationships with those guests, but did various surveys throughout that time. So again, similar to what Julie said in terms of staying in touch with those customers and what are they feeling? Everyone's like, oh, it's, is it a matter that you're not feeling safe? Or is it a matter that in our case, we have no product? Because in my business, I only can sell what is available. And so you can only do so many retro titles without having film product. And that's been part of the challenge. In terms of the cons, I think, and it's our team members and it dramatically decreased in terms of right sizing to what we needed for the business right now. And as we all know from a marketing standpoint, there are disciplines and aspects to each role that are skills that are unique. And so we had a core group that was able to remain throughout the time when we had to furlough people or part-time people or lay off people. But our team remains at less than a third of what it was a year ago in January, just from a marketing standpoint. And that's been really hard on a lot of people, including me trying to lead them and trying to stay motivated and to help them stay motivated and to show them that they're appreciated and that we're focusing on some of the new skills that we're all doing. And we're finding some of those efficiencies that Julie talked about because we're having to do it ourselves. So while it's a con, we try and obviously stay optimistic in terms of also the pro.
Mm-hmm. Let's try to dive into a little bit of what each of you said a bit more. And if I could follow up what you just said with a specific question to you, you reiterated that your operations were put on hold. You've had to reduce staff. You don't have product. If you could just kind of dive in a little bit more, Anne, to talk through maybe some of the long-term changes you will be making or have had to make to your marketing strategy. And maybe, what you think some of the changes are going to be to the entertainment sector as a whole. If you could share some of those insights with us.
Sure. If you would have asked me a year ago if I would have ever run a theater without being able to serve food and beverage, or if I would have opened a theater in a county where they said I can only have 10 people in an auditorium, even though it's a 150 seat auditorium, or that I could only have 10% in an auditorium that's 40, that's 4 people. Or if you would tell me that I'm going to have to open my theaters only for a limited number of days at limited hours and not have product, or even close at 6 o'clock on those limited days because of the regulations that are put in place. Obviously, as a marketing leader and as a businesswoman, I would be like, you have got to be kidding. There's no way that the math is going to work. And so part of doing the math is also a perception of what we're trying to do from the industry, because we are the 4th largest theater circuit. And my CEO is the current chair of our National Association of Theater Owners. So I have been very intimately involved in trying to help reopen and relaunch the industry. And so when you look at the changes to that point, Catherine, in terms of asking those questions, part of the reason that it was so important for us to have the theaters open that we could was to show people that we had safe protocols and it was available to come to, and that here were all the things we were doing. It was also to show the studios that we're here, we're open, you can give us product, people want to come. And obviously the third was the fact that we had 6,500 associates a year ago, and we were trying our darndest to make sure that we could keep as many as we could. And so for those reasons, it's the marketing strategies that we have. I still, like, I'm planning for our relaunch of the industry, but I'm still in the reopening stage of the industry. We have those people who are very comfortable. Our NPS scores have never been higher. They come in and they comment that they feel safer here than in lots of other places within the communities, but it's a perception in terms of that you're going to a movie and it's a big social gathering and how can they possibly make it safe? So, you know, I counted last week, we've had 80 different assets that we've put together in terms of a safety related message, whether it be our reopening page, whether it be the videos to show that experience so we can manage that. So all that together shows that our safety message is not going away, Catherine. It's not going to for some time, just because of perceptions. It also is that I'm still dependent on those studios, so I'm working really hard to try and make sure that when we do get the product, like Raya, that new wonderful Disney animated one opening this weekend, we had Tom and Jerry last week. We hadn't had numbers like last weekend since Christmas. So it kind of reinvigorated us, and it reinvigorated Hollywood. And so from there, it's just important that our marketing strategies are aligned with them. And in terms of, obviously, streaming has become a very important aspect as everyone has been home. And I think we just need to remember, and we're trying to emphasize, that they don't have to be exclusive. Movies become epic in theaters. And it's that experience of getting out and doing something that can help. And there is a place for streaming. And it's just a matter that we're trying to figure out as an industry, where is that window lie? And we're going to be continuing to work on it, because we're doing some things now that we're doing in the sense of COVID pandemic time that we're going to need to reevaluate based on when it comes other time. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. I guess similar question sort of for Julie, your, you know, similar sort of industry, but what have been, or what were the ripple effects of COVID on your overall marketing strategy? What's been hardest to navigate, and were there opportunities that might have arisen as well?
Yeah, sure. I think, you know, a big part of our marketing focus through all of this, and continues to be, and I echo what Anne just said, is really communicating our safety message and making sure people are feeling like we're doing everything to make it a safe space for them. You know, the restaurant industry as a whole, I think there's some really great lasting effects of some things that have happened. I personally think curbside pickup is going to be with us for a long time. It's a nice option, and it's not going to be what you do every night of the week, but I think having that, and now that people know how to do it and they know how to order online, that is something that's going to stick around. Now, fine dining restaurants didn't participate quite as much in that. I know for us in particular, you know, it's hard for us to deliver the same kind of food, the same kind of experience you might expect in a curbside pickup. But I will say, you know, we've came up with some ideas of trying to offer that through take-home meal kits. We did a really interesting, fun one for Valentine's Day, and it was very well received. I think for special occasions, you know, coming up with ways to bring that experience home for people is a really, you know, I'm glad we were sort of forced into figuring that out, because I think it will stick around. And then I just think for us to, you know, being able to connect with people digitally, offering chef demos online. There's just an audience even beyond our market here that we could reach traveling audience that may be coming to visit Milwaukee in the future and want to hear about our restaurants. And I think there's some really interesting lasting things that are going to stick around for a while. How we've redone our patios, I think, will also continue to be popular. So yeah, I think a number of those things have been good, and we'll continue to, take advantage of them moving forward.
Thank you. Christina, I have a question from the audience too. A specific question based on what you were saying earlier, and also maybe an audience question that we'll add to this too. But given all that you were talking earlier about how many firms have had to quickly adapt to digital marketing strategies that may not have really embraced digital marketing in the past, can you kind of talk through some of the range of reactions, all these changes, and maybe adaptations you've seen your clients make, whether they've been resistant or accepting of those changes? So if you could kind of start with that follow-up question, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think, I don't know if it's been resistance really as much as struggling to understand how it all works now. As Anne and Julie were fantastic examples of, there have been a bunch of studies that have shown that like 90% of marketers had to change their marketing strategy in 2020. So everybody had to change everything that they did, and digital was a huge part of that. And so I think that people wanted, at least in my industry, to be part of that change, because we all want to survive, right? You want to employ as many people as you can. You want to keep the business going. If you're a nonprofit, you want to do good in your community. We all wanted to do that. So the hard part was, if you weren't actively doing digital marketing or inbound or trying to make your website part of your sales funnel, so like if you were basically behind the times, it was really hard for those people to understand the technology that makes it all work, which is, not the visible part of the website. And so I've had to spend a lot of time teaching people about how search engine optimization works now, because it's really different from what most people think and how it works. And if they weren't paying attention to it, which, who would if you're not in the industry, they ended up being surprised, and so like a couple quick examples, like Google changes their algorithms thousands of times a year, literally. At the end of 2019, they rolled out an algorithm change called BERT, which was basically like a natural language processing thing. So super quick example, like if you Googled parking on a hill with no curb, it used to pull up a thing that would show you how to park on the hill with a curb, because the search engine didn't understand how the word no modified the meaning of the entire rest of the sentence. And so BERT has made it possible for them to understand that. And then as an extension of that, towards the end of 2020, they rolled out an algorithm change called Smith, which allows them to do that for like up to 2,000 characters on a page. So the good thing for people like us who've been around for a long time is it means that we can market in ways that are natural and human, and the search engine can understand that. The other thing that is hard for people to understand is that the technical aspects of your site, so not the cool stuff that you can see, but the platform it's sitting on, the speed of the page, how fixed things are on the page, metadata, title tags, all of this stuff is really important. It's like 70% of search engine optimization. And so if you don't pay attention to the technical aspects of your site, or especially like if you don't have a good mobile experience, a lot of people are surprised to know that Google evaluates the quality of your site based on the site's mobile experience, whether or not your users come primarily from a desktop or not. And so if you don't have a technically sound website, you can create a lot of content, you can have a beautiful website, you can do all of these great things, and it won't work. And so we've had to do a lot of education around the complexity of all of that, because people want it to work, but it's hard to understand why they should put money into the part of the site that they can't see and find hard to understand.
That's great. So one of the questions we actually were planning to talk through, and you kind of touched on this with SEO optimization being probably here to stay and worth the investment, And I think that it was maybe Anne who said earlier on that they've invested a lot in low touch or no touch technology to ensure your customers feel safe. Could each of you kind of go around and tell us what you think some of the important investments will be for marketing going forward?
I'll go first. I think one of the biggest things that we seem to be seeing a lot of interest in, and I think is going to make a difference for lots and lots of businesses, is an investment in an inbound platform. So, you know, like Hubspot or Campaign Monitor or something like that, because it can help you communicate in a real and authentic way to build a relationship, but it automates some of that. And so we're seeing a lot of interest in that from, you know, clients and prospects.
And for anybody who doesn't know, HubSpot is a digital automation platform that allows you to receive leads from your website to automate some of the digital marketing assets that would be sent out to your customers. But that was what Christina mentioned. Julie?
I would say for us, you know, several of the marketing tools that we use have been a bit compartmentalized. You know, a loyalty program, we have an interface for reservations and guest relations. And for us, it's going to be an investment in how do we create more of an enterprise-wide system that lets us connect those dots and understand a guest all the way through their journey and give us information on how best to relate with them. So it's more, you know, under the hood, not very sexy kind of stuff, but it's super important. And for those of you who work in organizations that have that, I'm really jealous.
And on our front, it's, excuse me, it's continuing to build that app, but also we recently launched, as we were trying to counter, again, we've been trying to be creative of new revenue streams. And so we launched Marcus Private Cinema, which allows you to rent an auditorium starting at $99 for up to 20 people. And so we have a site that we send you to, and you can either choose self-serve or you can choose full serve. But that platform and technology, we're doing some additional neat things in that you as the party planner or the host will have the ability to be able to do even more than you do now. Because that really has been a saving grace for us as we look at those people who need something to do for birthday parties or a girls' night out, or on Valentine's Day, one of my partners said, oh my gosh, I'm taking my wife and we're having our own auditorium. How cool is this? And so that has helped us try and counter that safety message, as well as the fact of giving people the escape to the movies, because everyone has told us they still enjoy that escape. It's just a matter they need to feel safe. So we're continuing to make technology investments on that front.
Great. All right, we have about 3 minutes left. So I'm going to ask one of the questions from the audience, which was just with everything happening digitally, our consumers getting burnt out from too much advertising, and maybe, you know, how do you cut through that? Or is it not a problem? So do you think there's too much advertising and are people getting burnt out? And then in our last time, I'd like each of you to provide maybe some words of advice for marketing leaders as we look ahead. So Christina, do you want to touch on the burnout question maybe quickly?
Yeah, I think the answer honestly is yes. I wish I could say it was no, because, you know, then I could sell more ads. But there's a stat, and I don't remember the number, but mentions of the word doom scrolling went way, way, way up in December. And there's a lot more talk about quitting social media and trying to be offline. So, and like Anne mentioned, there's a hunger to go back. Like, I mean, we're going to be, the first live event for Tempo is going to have every single member. It's going to be crazy. So yeah, I do think that there is some burnout, and you have to just be creative and human with people, I think. And like, we just have to work at building relationships. And then I think my last minute word of advice is, you know, technical SEO. And remember that you're a person, they're a person. And just because there's a screen in between the two of you doesn't mean that you should relate to them in a hard sell or spammy way. Be authentic and be human, even when you're online.
Julie, Anne, words of advice?
My suggestion is just to realize that anything can happen. And even of us who love to be the best of planners, the reality is that it's going to change. and to be comfortable with that and to accept the fact that what you can control and what you can't.
I was thinking similar along those lines as well. I think nowadays it's definitely not about what you know, it's how well you can adapt. And I think it's pushing yourselves to listen to and follow other industries, because what other industries are doing can apply in some very interesting ways, and kind of use this as an opportunity to break out of your own bubble safely.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Christina. This was really good content. Kelly, I think we're at about the top of the hour. I'll turn it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you to our panelists and our esteemed moderator. Thank you, Catherine, for running the show for the last hour. What an amazing set of information and experience. And I just feel like it was such a human touch. I, of course, want to share that we have some upcoming exciting programming. We have our March program meeting on March 18th, and this time we're hearing from local leaders talking about tackling tough topics, old and new challenges. So we're going to see and be visited by County Executive David Crawley and Commissioner Lafayette Crump. Don't miss that one. And then, of course, we've got our 31st Annual Mentor Awards, our heroic mentors, celebrating and honoring the winners of this year's awards. And that is on Thursday, April 29th from noon to 1 p.m. And it's always a fun event. So looking forward to that as well. Without further ado, though, I turn you back over to your Fridays. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you again to our panel. Thank you, Tempo team, for hosting another wonderful program for us. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the weather. Take care, everyone.